This conference will now be recorded.
All right, now it's recording. Good meeting.
Thanks, Joseph.
Thanks.
Will do.
Um, Good evening and welcome to the Emergency Preparedness Commission meeting, February 22nd, 2024. The first discussion of current projects, mission statement, still working on a draft version of that. So that's going to get pushed to next month.
So you'll go ahead and give us kind of something that you've come up with, and then we can kind of go over it before next meeting.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Jim, we kind of discussed that yesterday when we had breakfast, and you had sort of a mission statement in one form, and I had passed one on to you and uh, Gary of things that we could partition out, that we could develop expertise or have a latent expertise in those areas. And I don't know whether that's what you have in mind, but I would strongly encourage that in a uh, format that's easily to read, category. There's so many things that in parallel need to be looked at, and we could make a lot more progress more quickly. And I mentioned, well, you have some of them already, the signage and all that, the prep side of emergency preparedness, which is more all encompassing than recovery or response, although response is part of your preparedness because you got to have a plan to respond. But we need to identify available resources, transportation, and what the plan is for that. I was pleased to learn that there's a lady that's up in Coos Bay that's addressing the wildland urban interface. I would show that as a category, but managed currently by whoever her name is up in Coos Bay. The finance side of it, arrangements with local suppliers, hardwares in particular, so that we don't wait at the last minute. Well, how do we get this from them? We don't have a formal agreement. Communications is a big issue, and there should have been a wake-up call in the last 24 hours after what's happened on the East Coast. And it's even worse than that now, because even local service is not as robust as it used to be with all the VoIP services and all that. So that's another category. And then the integration with the ham radio operators is another one. Uh, what I would like to see is a categorization of these specialty areas, tentative leadership in those so that everybody's not overlapping, where the result of the leadership and whatever people he works with gets fed back through the commission, and then yay or nay or a modifier, whatever it takes before it goes back to the city manager or the council. Uh, I think we could make a lot of progress, and then we wouldn't be stepping on each other. Now, I've seen all the work somebody's done on the signage. I wouldn't even think about stepping into that. Somebody's done a good job. They know the city better than I do. Uh, but I might have something else to offer. And I'm sure everybody in the commission has something to offer. So I would strongly like to see something build off of your original document and what I've submitted to identify who's going to do what and how this feeds back to the council. And the last thing is, as far as what these areas are, I don't think the council really knows what they want. They may or may not, but either way, we're indicating to them, this is what we're working on. This will be our priorities. And they really don't have much choice but to say yay or nay. And they'll probably say, great, go for it.
Or they could suggest a minor change.
Or changes, yes,
Uh-huh.
precisely. So
But they have something, a framework to critique.
you're more likely to get a comment back on something they see in writing than they're creating something on their own.
Oh,
So
yeah.
Yeah.
Guarantee that.
that way we're not spinning our wheels. If they come back and say, yeah, this isn't such an important part of it, that's not what we really wanted, uh, better to get that discussed on the front end than the back end. So that's what I would like to see. I would help prepare that. I've already did a rudimentary form of that same idea. As I say, very similar to what you already had. Maybe mine was a little more expansive, but that's my thought on the uh, statement of work. We created ourselves, send it forward. And I don't know what we'd wait for between now and the next meeting, but I think if we do that, we can make a lot of progress and make some tentative assignments.
I
That's my thought.
really like that idea. I think that's an excellent idea to divvy out these different agenda items because there aren't a lot of us to do these things, but perhaps if each of us could take a particular issue or item, we could also pull in other volunteers to work with us individually, perhaps to address those things.
I feel that's really important, Carol. That's a good point.
I agree with that, Carol, because we'll call it the leader of that particular segment of the plan can draw in whatever resources he needs. I would talk, if I was handling finance, I'd talk to the bankers, I'd talk to the merchants, transportation or resources, I'd talk to the people that have heavy equipment. So in that manner, a lot of citizens could be drawn in and they would realize, gee, we're really working on something. Thank you for
Yes.
saying that, Carol.
And telling their friends and
Passing the word along, word of mouth.
Yeah, where I am on the mission statement is trying to incorporate what you gave me into it. And I've just been sidetracked with other issues.
Perhaps we could list those issues, those items that we feel need to be addressed, and then decide who will tackle or work on those individually. Does that sound like a good starting point?
yes, I think that we need to get a email out to everybody with the list, and then we'll make sure that that is the list and everybody agrees. I think we can do this before the next meeting,
No, absolutely.
Well,
and then everybody can think about what they might want to take on. And if we could assign them before the second week of next month, we can we can actually take it to the council at the next meeting, the third week. So we'll just see if that can happen.
what would you like to see on the list?
What Dick
Huh?
emailed us. Dick emailed us a list of items. You and I.
Okay, I was just wondering, what did people see that we
Well, that
want
list
to work
needs-
on?
Well, I think that list needs to be fine tuned a little bit, and then it wasn't intended to be all inclusive, but we could take that as a starting point and throw some names behind it and maybe prioritize it. And tentative assignments, like I say, not everybody's expert in everything. So I think by trading this document by email, we could make a lot of progress pretty fast.
Okay.
And we can use what I wrote already as a building block to get started.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes, I feel we need to do more work on this vis-a-vis email or texting, because just meeting once a month, we're not going to get very far very fast. And I feel a sense of urgency, especially after this latest water breakdown. And a number of things come to mind with regard to that. And the biggest one is communication or the lack thereof. And so I'm thinking not even waiting for a fire or a flood or an earthquake. We've got our own water issues that should be an immediate, how do we respond to those, and what do we need to respond to those?
On some things like the water, Carol, it's a matter of waiting a certain amount of time to get the information, and that's what I've tried to do. I made several updates today, but I had to wait until something happened, and then I found out what had happened, and so it does take a little bit longer than what people would like a lot of times. But you really, I feel that we want to get it right.
Yes, and you know, Wiz, you've got such a burden already on your shoulders. I'm amazed at what you do, and I so appreciate that. And the fact that maybe that issue can be given to someone else. And so we can begin to unburden your load because you've done so much in the past and continue to do that. I so appreciate it. But now maybe with divvying up these things, we can help you out with that more.
Part of that, it works for me because I'm connected to the city, and I'm able to just get in and find out things that might be harder. But we can look into that for sure. I appreciate that.
Okay. Moving on. Sign locations. I did up a list here, and sorry, Carol, I didn't send this out. I was having computer problems myself. The question is, which ones are the most important out of this list? And this list is using the state routes is how I generated this. So,
Well, I'd have to drive around and look at some of them. I can tell you the Arizona and 12th Street is probably a pretty important one. Just because that's a main drag out of that area.
Just out of curiosity, who prepared this signage plan?
that was my work.
Your work?
Yeah.
Maybe you could come up with proposed prioritization and based on all you've done already, and my bet is most people will buy into it.
I wanted other people's opinions, so it wasn't just my opinion.
Well, I think we need to be able to look at a map to be able to just determine that.
Yeah, plus it kind of helps if you know where your population is generally located and sort of what their usual patterns of
And
movement are, you know.
Hamlet's for sure.
Yeah, the Hamlet
Priority.
comes out on 14th and on 12th. And
But we want them going up Coast Guard Hill.
so that's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
the Arizona
Mm-hmm.
street, particularly on the 12th and the 14th. Coast Guard Hill, that is confusing after the state put up the ones on the highway there because it shows you going, but unless you're familiar with Coast Guard Hill, you get to where you turn left to go up the hill.
I know.
I mean, there should be some kind of
To the lookout over the port.
yeah. I mean, that's
Instead of
great if you're
wiggling
local, but
around,
if you're a tourist and you don't know Coast Guard Hill, you might not know, turn to the left there. So I would say that
And that's
one.
not a bad spot for them because I'm sure that's out of the zone, isn't it? Up to Overlook, or would it be?
Oh, no, Coast Guard Hill? Yeah, it's
No,
out.
no, the Overlook.
Oh,
That might not be high.
oh, there. No, I wasn't referencing. You mean,
Well, I was thinking that was the wrong turn.
no. What I'm talking about is if you're coming down the highway and you see all those signs across from Pinnacle 365. Now they have a big swath of signs and, you know, they point, there's all these things. It's like, you know, Coast Guard's lifeboat station and tsunami zone or, you know, evacuation route. Well, you turn there and you drive and then there's no more signage
Right.
in the next 2 blocks away. Well, you know, I know, Joe Blow from Portland don't know.
But they could turn right.
And they
just
could
do
be
the
driving
right.
right out to Agate Beach, driving right into it, you know, instead of turning. So I see that as kind of,
An important.
and that just has to be a little round sign stuck on a thing. It doesn't have to be a, you know, major deal. But, you know, that's what I'm saying. It's just kind of drive around and look at these through the eyes of people from outside the area, as well as your general population that lives in Hamlet that it's counterintuitive to them to go toward Coast Guard Hill, even though that is their closest
Mhm.
escape route. And so you have to overcome that predisposition to go, oh, I need to head for the senior center, or, you know.
I'm wondering if we could have different size signs and that could change the price.
I think there's just like the round ones, mostly. It's a
I'm
pretty
still waiting on
standardized
the
sign.
state.
Okay.
And, I mean, you can see them,
Yeah.
you know. They have one on 18th on 101. They have one for sending people up 18th.
You know, one idea is that I think the council would have the ability to decide is if we can use stop signs.
And you can. I was just in Bandon and I noticed that, you know, they are like on the back of some of the stop signs, they now have a round evacuation sign. So if you're
That would
driving
save us a lot of
and,
money.
you know, you're coming off Chicago Street onto that, whatever the one that's right by the docks is,
Mhm.
you know, there's the stop sign and there's the evacuation thing just clanked onto the metal signpost, you know. You don't have
Right.
to buy a post, you know, just get the sign. So,
Doesn't that seem like a good idea? Because just the cost of the post and digging the hole, and maybe we might have to do a few, but there's a stop sign,
but like at 12th Street, that's a four-way stop.
so there's going to be plenty of choices.
Do we want it on a metal post or a wooden post? I was originally thinking wooden. post.
Whatever the post happens to be.
Yeah,
I
mean,
think they're
the stop
mostly
signs are
wood.
Wood, but
Yeah.
I don't know what they are on
I
12th
think
Street.
they're-
I can't
I
remember.
think they are, but I haven't really
The ones
been
in
looking.
Bandon are on metal, but
Um,
if you ain't out of there by the time the water comes and hits that post, you done deal anyway.
How's your swimming?
You better have your
lessons?
boat. Your rubber ducky.
Yeah, right.
Um,
Swim fins.
So I'll ask at the next council meeting if.
But yeah, I could drive around and look at some of these with this list. That's helpful.
Because then it'd be 100 and something per sign, and
Yeah.
that would be it.
And
for the-
Battle Rock, there's a stop sign at the Battle Rock
the post,
parking lot.
um,
That's a real important one. So we have lots of tourists there.
I think I was looking at 12-foot posts and they were about $18 for a pressure treated.
But there's to dig in the hole and doing all of that.
Somebody have a postal digger on their
I'm saying
tractor.
that, you know, the amount of time it would take for volunteer hours that we have very few of, that if it was just putting signs on stop signs,
That would be good, but if you have a tractor with a postal digger, it'd probably take about 5 minutes per hole.
well, I don't see it that way.
Okay.
But we can all decide on that. How does everybody feel?
How
I mean, what do we want to recommend to the council on this?
many do we want to have just,
I would think the more we have, the better.
okay.
Just, you know, as people are driving around, they just keep seeing, you know, signs and they get slowly in the back of their mind, they recognize their route, and then we can promote it on Facebook and in the paper to
Uh-huh.
be looking for these signs and be checking where you're going to go. If you're shopping or even if you're not at home,
Mhm.
you're somewhere in town, you're in unfamiliar territory as far as where the high ground is. Because if each year we could afford 10 or 15 signs, we just keep going, eventually we could say we have enough. Does that make sense?
Map.
That would be part of the priority part.
Yeah, we get our priorities and work our way through.
Well, you use a post that's already there, that's.
I'll just sit down there with
Saved
Jim and look
plenty
at the map and
Mhm.
get a better idea. Some of these are
Yeah.
sort of vague,
I
but
just-
it's hard to describe, you know, just on a point basis like this. So we'll sit down and with the map and you can show me. But I think you've hit a lot of them.
At this point, the list is 40 signs.
Mhm.
One thing about that is get some media attention with that. Suggest people look at the signs in their immediate neighborhood and have a plan ahead of time how they're going to go. And as far as the visitors, they don't know where they're going anyway, but they're going to follow people that look like they know where they're going. That'll-
Yeah. Yep.
That's what I would do.
Mhm.
But we could get some visibility that way. And what's that website somebody has, that Facebook page? That's a good forum for reaching a lot of people. You know about that?
I run the networks.
I know you do. But that's a very effective forum.
We've got a lot of members in it.
I would recommend that we keep the signs, at least each type, all the same.
Okay.
Otherwise, people will be focused on the first sign
Mhm.
and they'll totally miss the second sign.
That's a good idea. Well, you had said that it was $250 to put a post in the ground.
That was if the state does it.
Uh,
And that's out of date, so it's probably double that now.
So I think using existing signposts would really be
Yeah.
because it's more than 5 minutes for volunteers to be
Mhm.
putting a signpost in.
I was
And you're not
referring to
allowed to
digging
use-
the hole with it.
You gotta use
Tractor.
those posts that have the holes drilled in them so they break off and, yeah, it's not just a post.
Does the
Okay.
city have a tractor with an auger?
No.
Bummer.
Yeah,
But if
and I
if
think,
there's some that aren't, we want one there and there isn't a post, then
Right.
we would.
well, maybe let's just start by prioritizing, figuring out how much were the round signs?
They were about $100 each.
And figure out how many we can budget for in the first year and prioritize the most important areas.
Mhm.
Paradise Point, there's a fair number of, there's like bed and breakfast and, vacation rentals and stuff out there. That might be a priority. The Hamlet and that area is the most vulnerable area for our,
Mhm.
for a tsunami. That is really where it's gonna, the state has, when I talked to Tagami about that, they were just like, we're not sure how people are gonna get out of there, especially if they can't drive. If it's not drivable and they're impaired at all.
Mhm.
It's, the amount of time,
There's a
because
lot of
it's so
population.
low, the hamlet is so close to Garrison Lake and so low, it's pretty vulnerable.
At some time, we could look into the possibility of getting a grant and doing a tower, like at the park or something like that.
That's an interesting thought.
But would be something we could, look for if there was some kind of grant to do something like that. To be aware of it.
Anyway, why don't we figure out how many signs the budget can come up with, and we'll prioritize the first 6, and get 6 of them up. And then,
Take a look at, one of the maps have the routes printed on them,
I got it.
and take a look at it and see which route makes the most sense. And let's go with that. And then we can calculate how many signs we need. Another thing is on the Facebook page, let's put a request out for people who are interested in a project of putting in tsunami signs in Port Orford while we're figuring all this out.
I like that idea. And I was thinking that maybe we could take a weekend and decide on where we want the 4 most important signs. And then just before that, put it out on Facebook and in the community that we need help to meet at this spot on this day to help dig a hole and put this important sign up. We could try it and see if it works a first time, and then perhaps if it's successful, we could do it again.
It almost seems like if we are able to use existing posts, if somebody drove around with a truck,
2
And-
people could do it pretty quick.
yeah,
and
and just with a drill.
6 people could do it pretty slowly.
Well, if you separate them up to different areas, then it'll be faster.
but you could stand in the back of a truck and be at the right height probably, and it really, that part of it really wouldn't take too long.
Okay.
But I really like the idea of just involving volunteers in
Start getting the community active in our
mhm,
project.
in getting projects done and in the involvement of people being together and getting used to the idea that we have an emergency department and
So 101, we already have those signs up.
Those, I haven't drove around to confirm that we have all of them. This was put together
Oh, okay.
as a,
All right. I'll check those and make sure that I'll do a copy. But those I think are done.
I think they are, but I think there might be one or
be a
two that
few that-
need to be added.
And, I mean, it's like when you're driving north and you drive through Bethel Creek. I never realized that was a tsunami zone until I was really paying attention. It was like, a tsunami zone here? Yeah.
I know it's so easy. Like I haven't actually seen any tsunami signs other than I've seen a few like at Hensley.
You have
But-
blinders on.
But I'm just like looking down the street. And I think a lot of people do that. So that we'll probably want to have a campaign to
Yep.
tell
The
people about
Facebook thing that Carol was talking about. Yeah, we want
paying
to.
attention to.
Hey, look, we got a new sign up. Go admire it. Please don't. Yeah, you talk about the tower, and I just go, oh, how could they vandalize that?
Yeah.
Do we know how many signs we can put on existing posts versus the ones we'll have to dig a hole and put a post
Yeah,
in?
we've been talking about that, and you are allowed to do that. They've been doing it in Bandon, and they've been doing it in Coos Bay.
But do we know how many places we need to actually put a hole
Oh,
in
we
it?
need to look at that. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Prioritize the first 6 most important ones. Go look at the situation.
Yeah,
See if
good
we-
idea. I do know someone with a mechanical post hole digger, and I think he would be good to drill holes for us.
Can you contact him and ask?
Yes, but let's find out when and
We won't be
where
buying
and how
signs
many.
until the next budget, which would be in the fall,
Um,
the
Okay.
end of the summer.
I disagree.
So-
We do it before summer. We have money in the account. If
We don't have money in the account. I'm pretty sure there isn't any money in the
don't know.
emergency account.
last I checked, there was, but
We can check. It's been, all of that's been pretty crazy, but
okay. Well,
money's been shifted around and because there's been some.
so it got
priorities.
removed from our budget.
Yeah, and I'm not positive what we actually have, and I'll have to look at that.
At this point, I'd like to skip to what do we want to talk to about next agenda? And so that I'm not creating the whole cloth.
Well, one of the things I really want to emphasize is I really like this thing that Carol made up with the house numbers for the fire department. This is exactly what we had in mind for adding to the water bill, and come back to putting out once a month 6 different preparedness statements that are simple like this, that just get rotated so everybody would get the same thing twice a year. And if they're simple like this, even if they go to vacation rentals, they can stick them up, and for having people be self-prepared. And I had discussed the 6 different things, and we could maybe have that on the agenda next time, of the 6 different topics for being self-prepared, because that is, it's great to have all these plans for, where we're going to get equipment and stuff like that afterwards, and that is important, but it's pretty important that people have their own preparation plans in place.
I agree with that.
And
One additional thing is I want to put in the water bill directions to the Facebook page because that's where we're putting a lot of the information
yeah.
out.
So Carol, did you send these house number flyers out with the bill yet?
No, actually, what I wanted to do was get the recommendation from our commission here to City Council, giving it to Pat Cox and asking him to put it on their agenda to approve it being in the water bill. But I really wanted it to come from the group.
Yeah, and this one comes from the fire department, but it is a good template for how to do it. You know, we had
Mhm.
Clark Kusarik came up with one for the first one, which defined distant tsunamis as opposed to catastrophic, and you know the different reactions you had to have, and they basically he put that together from the state page. But even at that, it took him, I think, 2 or 3 hours. How long did it take you to compose this, Carol?
Well, when I sent it off to a graphics company in Coos Bay,
Oh.
that was difficult because I wanted them to replicate most of what came out of the Phoenix Fire District's flyer, but
Mm-hmm.
incorporate our stuff into it with our logo and so forth. And I'll tell you, I had to go back and forth 6 or 7 times before they got it right. So I think
Wow.
it's right now. And
Uh-huh.
it's paid for the um, uh, whatever we need to send to a company to duplicate them. It's ready to go. But again, if we could just maybe take a vote supporting this document, this flyer being sent out in the water bills and recommend that that happens for the city council, then I can bring that to city council and say, this is what the Emergency Preparedness Commission recommends. We would like to get your approval to send it out.
I
Does that
see.
make sense?
Yeah. So
That's perfect. We'll try to get it on the next
do we
agenda.
want to make a motion now? Okay, I make a motion that we submit the house numbers flyer from Carol that to the city council for approval to be included in the water bill.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion approved.
Thank you.
You didn't like make me feel all warm and fuzzy though, telling me how difficult it was. I was like, oh,
Oh,
I was
but
hoping you'd
listen,
say, oh yeah, I knocked that out in half an hour.
no, so it was more, most of it was done by the other fire department. They did a fantastic job, but this company couldn't use the same house. Well, when they sent back a draft with a house on it, it was a log cabin in the woods. And I says, that doesn't really depict what most of the houses look like. And I think that was 3 different times until I finally looked up one and sent it to them and said, use this. This is more of what, because they couldn't use the original one that was on the poster because they didn't know where it came from. So we finally came up with that. And then messing with the logo for the fire department, that was back and forth quite a bit. But we got it done. So that's the bottom line.
It's possible we could come up with a real simple, I've done real quickie kind of layouts and grabbed a image off of Google image and then work on improving them.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe a year or two later, we have like really slick
Yeah.
ones, but
Well, the one that Clark came up with, which I can't find right now.
I've got it on the computer.
Oh, that's where I have it. That's right. I think he used a lot of images from the state website,
Mm. Oh, right.
and they're, I think, pretty open to that.
Mhm.
So
Right.
Okay. Next item is,
So let's say we want, for the next agenda, we would have all the topics listed and then maybe we can decide who might be able to just
write up. So
write up something just to get it going. And
I'll get together with you on that, Jim. I've got my.
Well, I can take the lead on that if you want. And then what I would do is get that out for comment additions, and I'm sure that there'll be some. And then if anybody sees something they really would like to get involved in, we can put them as a tentative leader for that particular function. I can do that.
That sounds good.
Go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, so if we get it out to the commission members, maybe you get something that's in semi-final form to go forward after the next meeting. So then we gain a month on that or two by just having something on the table. It'd be nice to get something in the early stages to council that they can buy into and know what we're doing.
mhm.
Yeah. So what we had and that we talked about here before for our 6 different basic categories, we're going to have 6 different mailers. This isn't one of them, but for us, so that like in January, you would get, this one. And in July, you'd get that same one again. Because if you keep sending people stuff, eventually they kind of get it.
Junk mail, that's what it's called.
Well,
I don't know how that fits in with what we were talking about, but I'd like to hear more what you had.
well, she's putting this in there into the water bill.
Oh, but that's a different subject. I thought he was asking
Oh,
about.
no, this is what we were still talking about.
That's what we made the motion on.
Oh, okay. I thought we were through
So
that.
No, and we had, and then,
Sorry about that.
okay, all right, never mind. Pressing onward.
the list of the 6 topics again.
Yeah, oh, I can write them up for you better, but the first one was, and did you get Clark's email on that? It was quite a
Yes.
while ago. I'll have to go back and see if I can find it. But the first one was just defining the basics of a tsunami, distant and catastrophic, and, the basic things you need to do. And it has to be really simple. The second one was,
Wait, I think you just need to.
yeah, I need to, because it's, I'm
Too
just
much
gonna
to
waste
write
time.
down.
Yeah, I'm just gonna have to put it together for you and show you, but I'll just list it off. Define distant and catastrophic basics. Number 2 is your go bag essentials. That is cut and paste from the state Tagami website.
Perfect.
3 is home preparation, so that what you need to have ready for your, in case stuff happens. 4 is the evacuation kit long-term. So you've got your go bag and then you've got your long-term evacuation kit. And 5 is special preparations for young, old, disabled family members. And, plan for evacuation assistance. And I think somebody in there threw in pets in there too. And then 6 is assistance is planned, but be prepared to take care of yourself. And this is a major thing, is, getting people out of the mindset that somebody's going to take care of me, and instead start thinking, I need to be ready to take care of myself.
What am
Absolutely.
I going to do? And so those are just kind of the base, and then, we can refine them. And if we,
want to add?
change stuff a little bit, but you just kind of keep rotating that through, and maybe they might read one once in a while with their water bill. You never know.
We'll have a bulletin board I'm working on at Ray's outside the front door.
I'll
That
get
will be
this.
a place
I'll email
for,
this to you, Jim, if I
for
can get it
those.
together. Write it up better. It's just such a scene for me.
Next item agenda was discussion of containers, where the next one might go after the 9th and Jackson Street.
Oh, now, do you want to go back to the agenda really quick just to make sure that you think you've got everything for next agenda? That's what we were just finishing. Or
Does anybody have any other
Well,
topics?
don't you want to come up with the categories of,
Well, I'm confused. I thought you went a little off agenda, which was fine, and we're talking about for the next agenda. I heard something
Yeah.
to that effect, so I was responding to that and
oh, yeah, no.
not
that-
realizing where you were.
Okay, well, I think that needs to be, you need to,
Okay, well, I just said that I would take the lead on that and get something out to the members to respond to. um,
Okay.
Hopefully within the next week or so. And maybe we can make a lot of progress on that by trading emails over the next 4 weeks and have something to consider. So I put in an item on the agenda that says progress on mission plan or mission statement.
Yeah.
I think that's important to get done on the head end though, just for the sake of the city buying into it.
yes.
Glad you agree with that, Gary.
yeah.
So any other ideas on the agenda?
Can I ask on that mission statement, have you sent out the draft on that? I'm trying to remember if I got something on that.
Carol, I sent out a list of things that I thought needed to be considered. Wasn't intended to be official or anything, and I think well, Gary had one. I think Jim has seen it. Maybe everybody could look at it, but I was going to just build on that and refine it. But it was a list of those items or subject areas that need leadership that can be assigned to people that have the skills to manage that. I'll be happy to
Okay.
send it. It's in very rough form, but it gives you some idea of what I'm thinking about.
Yes, I think I remember getting something, and unfortunately, I'm sitting in the car in Brookings right now, and I forgot to bring all my paperwork with me. So, but I'm recalling that you did send something out. That's kind of a basic start on that, correct?
Did you forward any of that I sent you?
I didn't forward it.
I don't think you've seen what I wrote, but I'll make sure you get it. How's that?
Okay, thank you.
Just for your
At this
enlightenment
point-
and amazement.
I'm trying to incorporate
Be good
what
to
Dick
send all of that kind of
sent
thing
to me,
I will.
and I'll be sending out the draft shortly,
I didn't even know what I was.
probably a couple days.
I sent that, I was presumptuous.
Uh-huh.
So Jim just said he's going to be sending out a draft in a couple days on that. So,
Okay.
So we have any other ideas on the next agenda?
that's it.
We'll talk about the mission statement and
Um,
the topics.
And mailers.
yeah.
We
We'll
should
have,
have something back from the
minutes.
council by then, I
Hope.
believe.
We probably should have, I'm thinking, a place on the agenda for any of the commissioners to report on anything that they might be doing. Because I've got like information on the CERT class for this one.
Well, I'm
And-
glad you asked that. I think that statement or division of responsibility would in effect be an agenda. Because then we're handling whatever it is, housing or finances or whatever. You can give a report. That would be one of the items on the agenda, and it could be a very brief report. And then everybody's aware that somebody's working on it and something is happening. Because frankly, I wouldn't look into most of these things because I don't know who else might be doing it, has more expertise than I do. But that would be your agenda going forward.
Okay.
I think last time, Wiz, you talked about a field trip out to the site there on Jackson to look at that piece of land, or Dee, where
Oh,
you were thinking of,
Jefferson, 9th Street and Jefferson Street
was it
that we were going to
Jefferson?
clear.
Yeah.
that we were going to clear for a container.
Yes. Did we want to talk more about that?
I think we've been kind of waiting for the weather to clear for us, and it could be that we can maybe just put it on the agenda just to see what the weather is kind of turned into next month.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's best to not have it during the rainy season,
Yeah.
because people get cranky when they're wet.
Yeah, and it's just a muddy mess if we don't need that.
Okay. Are we ready to move on? All right. I would like to identify the location of the next container after 9th and Jefferson. I would
Um,
also like to identify a spot that would make emergency operations center.
So I can give a report. I talked to Joe Kennick, the state parks director,
Okay.
and I had emailed him a while back about Coast Guard Hill having two 20-foot containers um, put in a spot up there. We met with several of them a while back, and they put the promotion or the proposal in, and he got back to me the other day, and the regional guy wasn't really very interested in it, but they're hiring a new operations director, and Joe and somebody else, I can't remember what his position is, but he was hoping that the three of them would be able to make the decision local and instead of making it a regional decision. And so they were going to they'll get back to me. They said not to count on it, but they were hoping that that could actually happen. And that would be a pretty good, it's quite a ways up, but it's in a spot where it's high. It's the highest point on Coast Guard Hill. So as far as communications go, that could be kind of our best shot on city property. You know, it's on state property, but it's in the city
Yeah.
realm.
Um,
And they
we were talking about a catch up there going there, but
I'm thinking of making it a command center
okay.
that would be a cache and, you know, a combination of things, but centered around the idea that you open the door, there's desks or whatever, and radios and whatever we would need, and
Okay.
and then mix it up with some supplies for the people at least that are up there, and equipment, and that seems like it could be a good.
Okay.
I was talking
Well,
to somebody about that. Was that you or that brave idea of containers? These containers that are the 40 footers that are used on job sites can be fixed up into really nice offices, and it would take a total disaster in the earth to damage one of those. Uh, that would be a good spot, I think, because of the communications, and it's well above the tsunami area. Um, it's hard to go forward on that until you find out whether or not they're wired into that or we do that somewhere else. But we could set up a very functional command center in one of the units and the other one for the resources that are, could be used for the event, whatever it happens to be.
Mhm.
But I don't know how we can do
That's,
two. We know what the state is going to do.
Right. I'm hoping that we'll find out by the summer because that person's going to get hired. And
okay.
Oh.
Well, what other site can we consider?
it's going to take some time to find another one.
can I
Only
ask though
certain
with
property.
Yeah. What's that, Carol?
can I have I have a question. That is state property, and in the event of an emergency, I would think there are rules, regulations for communities to be able to utilize those properties in emergencies.
They haven't really got any policy on that.
And we would be wanting to put a couple of containers there, which is a little bit different than using it during an emergency. Having it
Mhm.
cached there is a thing all the time, whether there's an emergency or not.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to agree
But
that they think it's okay to have that look, and we probably might have to put in the budget to paint them. And
Like the hedge. Oh no,
Mhm.
that's vandalism. It's easier with a hedge, yeah.
Well, maybe in parallel, we can look, and you may know or have somebody in the city that knows the properties and see if there's something else that would be.
well, we can go on the GIS map that's laid out, and you can look at all the parcels, and you can look at all the city property. But most of the city property that's available is in the tsunami zone.
Great.
You know, it's places in the wetland, you know, the street stops here, but really there's all this city property that 23rd Street goes through my property.
Yeah. Well,
there's
an important thing to find out, though.
It just, to get out of the tsunami zone, you got Coast Guard Hill and Hensley Hill and 18th Street, Jefferson and Deedy.
Got a little spot up there by the Castaway, but all of that is, premium property
Right.
for
It's gotta
tourists
be,
and,
it's got to be a street that's been vacated for some reason, or because the city, I gave Jim a list of the properties that the city has.
Yeah, there was about 8 of them that was above the tsunami zone
That I gave you.
that I pulled off the website.
That are city property.
Yep.
And-
I know one is up at 18th, but it's landlocked, so I'm not sure what the story on that is. There's one on Cemetery Loop Road, right where it curves.
yeah, that's kind of a
It
piece of ground.
it would take an effort to develop that one to get a container up there, but
So if we're mostly concerned about something that's going to be our base, I think we should wait and find out what the state parks say, and then maybe what do we have up at the Cedar Hall, Cedar Terrace Fire Hall right now? One container.
40 footer.
We
Yeah,
we
do
talked
have-
about having the ham set up at that facility one time, and the ham club came down and looked at it, and then they were having too good of a time, and the neighbor complained. But if I think we approached it more
Judy.
as having a setup there, we could maybe squeeze another container in there if it was just strictly radio.
I think we can get another one in right in line with that
Yeah.
one.
yeah,
The
if I
problem,
remember correctly, David approved 2 containers up there.
Yeah. So that could be another possibility if the state doesn't approve. I think that, Coast Guard Hill is a better site as far as
communication.
communications, but,
It'd
if we
be out
can't
of
get
a-
it, we can't get it,
It'd be out of a wildfire possibility.
It'd be less likely.
Next to the fire station's not a bad place.
There's no water there. That fire station has no water, so you're dependent on the
bladder.
stored. Well, we've got a 5,000 gallon tender tank back there, and then we've got a
Yeah,
$3,000 gallon bladder. But
Yeah.
The city's got the property that the Jackson Street containers on.
and then
And I mentioned that to the council a while back, and it seemed like there was no opposition, but that would take quite a bit of land work. There's a spot that's kind of hollowed out for that container that's there on Jackson Street and 12th. And that's for the school. but there's 80 foot there by maybe 100 foot, and part of it is wooded and is on a slope. But if we took the trees down one year, say, and then excavated the next, there could be containers that were apart, set apart, and then trusses put over them.
And that's up above the tsunami.
It's right about 85 feet, and that's the magic number. And that's really a local, a lot of people could end up in that spot because they're so close to it, right in the middle of town,
More
and
central.
easy to get to.
That's a big advantage.
So that would be another.
Yeah, because Cedar Terrace may be really hard to get to. That road was probably not going to survive any kind of a shape. It's barely surviving now. So- Anyway.
The equipment that would be really good to have somebody that could be you that knows a lot of people with equipment, Joe Marsh and Wayne Moore, and
Yeah, what are we referencing here?
for building roads and stuff after.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Mhm,
And if they felt like they were a team ahead of time
mhm,
and all signed in
mhm.
and knew that was going to be part of their role,
Yeah,
rather than them just taking it on, during the event.
mhm.
It seemed like it could be better to have them
Yeah.
heads up
Well, I can bring it up with Joe and Wayne Moore.
and see what they think, if they could, think of other people. And there's a lot of people with equipment.
Yeah, and a resource I hadn't really thought about until the other day was the ODOT yard in town here, which is in the tsunami zone heavily. But if it were, if it wasn't that high of a tsunami, you would still have that equipment. Plus, they have a big diesel tank that isn't sitting way up in the air.
Oh,
It's actually sitting on the ground. It would still probably, I don't know
Roll
how well,
around.
but, and it depends how much is in there, but that's, a diesel tank that would be a potential source of fuel.
Hmm.
But once again, let me see where they are. Let's see. And there's the park. Yeah, they're kind of in blast zone center.
The big one I still worry about a lot is grid failure for an extended period of time over a large area for our whole region, and everything would be intact. And if everybody was kind of organized ahead of time, we could just boom, 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 just start, ODOT's aware, they're going to be doing this, and the Public Works is going to do this, and all our roads would be in, but just nobody would be coming to help because everybody would be needing help. And
Power grid failure, or even communications to an EMP or CME event, very probable.
yep. And that's where I came up with the tin can string. If we had it, a tin can with a 50-foot string.
Got fresh batteries for it?
Go low tech.
What else you got?
On the communication, Eric, can you come up with a list of what the city would need for setting up a functional ham station?
Yep.
I think I did that last year, but I don't know if there's any record of I do it again.
Do it again. I don't have a copy of it. Okay. Another thing to think about, and we need feedback, is when an event happens, how big an event does it have to be before we get involved in trying to do the response?
And what would the responses exactly be? Like,
We need to define that.
because we could say, we take on, if we were to take on the city type events that happen, like the water failure, that could have been something that triggered us, and then we immediately, get involved. If I'm still on the council, whenever something like were to happen, um, we would just, I lost my thought.
Yeah, you were talking about what level it would be triggered at,
Oh, right.
and say if it was a water emergency. The complaint I heard in town today, and rare in town, but was the lack of information. And as you said, you want to have a complete picture before you tell people what's going on. But to me, that would be, in a smaller emergency, that would be beneficial. And I, you know, we'd have to presume that we still have, if it's kind of hard to define. It's like, is losing the water system in the city, we still have electricity, we still have connectivity with the internet, we can get information out there that way. That could be, that might be a thing, as establish somebody as an information person that would just say, okay, well, water's out. We'll get information to you as soon as possible. But if electricity is out, what is it we do?
Mm-hmm.
What I've seen people do is usually everybody gets in their car and drives around. That's been their reaction. Yeah, we had a total power outage, and we were in the theater back when we had a theater. And it goes dark, and the emergency lights come on, and everybody just sits there calmly. And this one guy gets up and gets out, and he goes, "Well, the lady, who was Chris Speed, owned it at the time, goes, she'll give you your money back if you want it." And I was like, and so most of the people, we just left, and went outside, and there's just people driving around because it's like, great, I think we were out of power for 36 or 48 hours, and the restaurants that had gas were cooking for people. And but that was just kind of,
It's sort of a how high is up question because
yeah, exactly.
it would almost be incumbent on the council or the city manager or somebody to make some declaration that and we'll say with power outage, that opens up a lot of problems that impair the city and the residents to function, not the least of which is soliciting the fire department for an emergency or rescue. So that might be a place where the hams would have a role.
Hmm.
And they should be prepared to be able to do that. And I don't know how scattered the folks are around town here, but a lot of that is on the fly. If you have the resources, you have to tap them to meet whatever the problem is. And I thought the grid outage was a good one because that's happened more than once. And the event that happened on the East Coast, which was really widespread.
Now, what, I didn't even hear.
The cell phone outage.
Cell phone outage or impairment, whatever it was.
I love they told people to use a landline.
Nobody.
70%, 80% of the people have cell phone only households. Think, yeah, find a landline.
AT&T has filed to eliminate their landline services. But as I mentioned, even in the landline world, that's very impaired now because of the decentralization of the switching. It doesn't work now if we don't have connectivity with the outside world. So that just went away. But
I think we'd have to have a central person that would trigger, that would be able to say on a lower scale, what had to be done. You know, so let's say we have a grid failure and it's, going to be, 48 hours according to BPA or whatever. That's going to have to come from, I think, city council or something like that. And, and what are we going to do? I mean, it's like,
the city manager and down through that channel.
yeah,
Because
I mean, because we
Why
can't,
wouldn't Coos Curry Electric be responsible for notifying people and giving out that information?
well, it would depend. If it was their outage, yeah. I just pulled BPA out of the hat because we have both those providers. CCEC gets their electricity from BPA, and if BPA goes down,
Hmm.
well, we certainly have no role in fixing their broken system, but we
no.
might have a role in supplementing it with the resources that are necessary for survivability in emergencies.
Mhm.
That's where I would see the role. I wouldn't even know where to start to fix that system.
Well, how could we assist people if, what are going to be the basic needs that
We
are
need
going
to
need to be?
define that.
It could be anything, but it could be, as you say, food, whether they're electric or propane or potties maybe. If there's an impairment of the water system or
There is a backup system, emergency backup system for sewage treatment and water treatment.
We've got big generators that they turn on.
when they work. What I've discovered, you can depend on emergency generators to work every time you do a routine test and fail when you need them.
Right.
It seems like it always happened that
Especially
way.
old ones, yeah.
Well, I don't know. They've got the same generator up there at the hatchery, and they run it once a month, and that power goes out at the hatchery like clockwork. And that baby starts up every time. Actually, it was kind of interesting because during the Y2K, remember Y2K?
All right.
That's when everything broke.
Yeah, we did an evaluation on where the emergency generation systems were in North County, and what we had was the water and sewage treatment and the hatchery. And the one at the hatchery just operated the pumps at the time. That was all. So it's like we could keep this happening and we could keep fish swimming in circles. It's like, wow, we're ready.
Another thing that we did
That was
because
it.
of that,
That was it. Yeah, that was all the power we had. Yeah.
we had an agreement with some of the rental companies to get first grab on some generators
Mhm.
because I'll use the county for an example down south where they had infinite amount of money, so it seems.
Hmm.
But the sites were all backed up with emergency generators. They were run monthly. They were remotely monitored. So if it did a start fail or for any reason that didn't do the normal routine, you were aware of it. So you're pretty confident that's going to work. Well, in one critical site, sure enough, the power went off, generator came on, ran for 2 hours and stopped. Well, we didn't usually run it for 2 hours on the test cycle. Well, what happened is it was an underground fuel tank with a gravity feed, smaller fuel tank. Whoever wired it up, and I'm sure it wasn't on purpose, but they wired the transfer pump under the primary power. The generator wasn't carrying that, so when it ran out of fuel on the one, there's 300 gallons of fuel underground, but you can't get it up where you need it. So you discover those things.
In the emergency.
Yeah, it was nobody thought to try that, and you just don't know. You got to have an alternate plan and figure how you're going to work if this thing doesn't start. That starts every month.
So
Would it be helpful to have someone from Coos Curry come and talk with us to maybe help us hash this out? Someone who would have some knowledge of the larger electrical system? Would that help?
I don't know because basically we just have to figure out what we would do if it shut down.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to be able to do anything except work on it. They're not going to be able to provide emergency generation.
I would agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Their hands are going to be full fixing the problem.
We hope.
And that's what they're really geared to.
Yeah.
And nothing really
Yeah.
more.
It's up to us to find a
So-
way to function when they don't.
Yeah, bottom line is, I think we just have to allow the city managers to function as that, as what, whether they want to enact. And if we do, then we can start drafting restaurants to assist that if they have, alternative methods of cooking. It really kind of worked organically quite well during the ones I've seen, where it was just like people just stepped up because what were you going to do? We could, a lot of it is finding placement if it's cold, finding placement for people who have alternative heat sources. Once again, that's a fluid thing. I mean, we could go around and write down everybody who's got a wood stove, and then 6 of them move. And, or, I don't think it's something we can really quantify very effectively. And it's a small enough population that we would be able to just,
Have people work it out.
have people work it out. I mean, it would be great to go around and talk to, the restaurants about this and stuff. But then again, restaurants close, restaurants open, owners change. So you would have to be doing it on a pretty regular basis. So to my mind, it would be just maybe having a system in place where the city manager could delegate a person to go around and talk to the existing restaurants during, because if the electricity goes out, you got a little bit of time and everybody's driving around anyway. So it's just,
They may not have a food supply, so many variables that it's hard to, as you said, you can't quantify it.
right,
Yeah.
right. So,
People being individually prepared is really a key,
once
because
again,
if almost everybody is self-sufficient for a period of time.
mhm.
I'm going to have to leave the meeting. I'm going over to the airport to pick up my son now, but I'll catch up on the minutes and talking with you, Wiz, late some other time.
Excellent, Carol. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
See you
Have a
soon.
good night.
Bye-bye.
So we didn't really come to a conclusion on that, or
My conclusion is that we just we just say that we would assist the city manager in, any kind of delegating of needed items, Do we need to find places for people to stay warm? How are we going to do that, and it's it's gonna be a very fluid thing. Do we need to find refrigeration for people's medicines? Do we need to find, fortunately, we don't have, a lot of, don't have any skilled nursing facilities. Those are usually more challenging because you have people on oxygen and stuff like that that are a little more, require a little bigger dose of electricity.
Mhm.
We should work on this and try to come up with different scenarios that we need to look at.
When we get the next administrator after the first couple of months, and I'll probably get in and talk to her ahead of time, but we could have her at one of our meetings. And
Do we have an administrator yet?
we're real close. There will be a decision made here in the next couple of days,
Okay,
for one.
good.
What's next?
General information. Ashley from the emergency of the county broke her leg.
Right.
She called yesterday and asked if there was anything that we needed for the water emergency, and
It's a plumber.
and I told her that we needed to talk, and so that'll happen before the next meeting.
Yeah, nothing 20
That'd be
million
good.
wouldn't fix. Got that laying around?
Did she mention the medical supplies or?
No,
Okay.
I was in the middle of the interview thing and I could talk to her for a few minutes.
We mentioned the budget and you were going to research that.
Yep.
That's all I got.
Okay, well, I'm gonna look at these street signs.
I can report that I talked to Ruth Dixon and I emailed everybody about the CERT training. And tentatively it's April 27th to 29th. She's going to flyer and get back to me as to the times. And I got the community center reserved. I'm not sure if she's wanting to do about 25 people for the first one. This sounds like her first.
It is.
So
I think.
Interesting.
Can we get an outline of what she's going to speak to in that? Because CERT's more of a response organization than a advanced planning organization. The very name suggests that, but it would be helpful to know because I don't think a lot of people really understand what the role of CERT is under the FEMA definition.
I don't.
I'm under the impression it's they're trained to be leaders in a group of people that are looking to be led.
Well,
you're going to end up with people, say, in a tsunami situation, you have them at Hensley Hill, 18th, Coast Guard Hill.
Yeah, organizing.
And if
people.
nobody up there is a leader or has a clue about it, then everybody, it depends on the personalities and how well they pull together. But if we had 100 CERT trained people in the community, chances are there's going to be at least a couple in each of those locations that would be able to pull.
Trained for what?
Just to talk to people and say, okay, just to calm people down and feel like things are working. And
I asked that because that was a loaded question because I think it's important to know. Well, I think it's important to know what their focus is, and it's more or less on the response, structure recovery or rescue, since they're doing it safely. What FEMA expects in terms of training, they've got a rigmarole you have to go through and all that, and then recertify annually and all that. I don't think people understand that. It's not a whole lot of planning. What I really liked best for the advanced planning was that OIT plan. And when he sent that out, maybe it was you, Jim, or somebody was sent out in an email where it's more focused on preparation. So I think it would be good to get a good grip from her on what she's going to talk about and whether it's applicable to what we're going to do. And I'm not talking it down. I'm just saying it needs to be understood by people. When you get involved in this, this is the trade-off. This is what they expect.
I got some of the CERT manuals. The city has them in storeroom. So they're available.
You start, see what they look
But
like.
how many people have read those? To summarize what.
I think they've collected dust since I got them.
But a summary, either on a web page or, on the Facebook page or something, this is CERT training. This is what you can expect. Because I don't think they know. A lot of people that you would think would be knowledgeable on that are not. It's a FEMA creation.
so for what I mentioned, does that seem to fit into what that training is about?
Not necessarily. I think what you're trying to do is good. Whether or not CERT is the best way to do that is a prep organization is kind of iffy, because I really did like what OIT was doing with their program. And CERT has a role more in response. So if volunteers come in to
and get back to
interact with the established public agencies, they know how the protocols work and how to function effectively rather than, hi, I'm here, what do you want me to do? So CERT focuses on that aspect of recovery and response. Just a thought.
And some of the things they have you do insert, a lot of people couldn't stomach because you might have to walk away from one person that's
Oh.
dying to help somebody else that's not in bad a shape. A lot of people would
Triage.
not be able to deal with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they may have a CPR and AED component too. I don't know. This depends on what their focus is. And I would certainly ask, is that her name, Dixon?
Yeah,
Or who was the
Bruce
first?
Dixon.
Yeah, I would ask, what can you publish that indicates what they can expect from that commitment of 3 days?
Hmm.
Just a thought.
3 days.
She said that if people were willing to come in a little bit early and it could be scrunched into 2 days, it sounded like. But
Either way, we need to know
it's
what
still a lot to
what
take
she's
on.
going to talk about and what her focus will be, and if it's appropriate for what we're trying to accomplish,
Mhm.
or the council, wants to accomplish.
So what do you think would be the type of training for leadership in, because we've had a number of tsunami warnings in the middle of the night, and people just went to these places, and there was nothing organized, and it was just chaos. It just depended on, like I say, the group of personalities at each spot as to whether they even got along with each other. But if we had enough people that had an understanding of how to just calm people down and what are the steps that we're going to take with these people.
I think that's one component of the FEMA 9 sections that they train. That's a good question. I don't have a good answer for you, but I think it's something we need to know.
Hmm.
Because you just don't know who's going to end up where.
Mhm.
So maybe all the city employees are trained, we got the fire department, but where are they going to be? Where's the police
Well,
department?
they have their own mission too, if there's any structural issues, but that's a good question. And I think we first find out what she envisions training,
Mm-hmm.
but leaders kind of emerge, of a group of people. Somebody will take the initiative to do something
Or not.
or not. That's
Yeah.
going to happen too.
That's a problem. And it was more or not
Hmm.
than,
A lot of or nots here. Well, we can maybe beef up the or nots to be the have do's or whatever. I mean, that's all good issues, all questions.
whatever the best way is to do that. And I'm not positive myself, but I just feel that, whatever it is, if you had 100 people that had that
Yeah.
basic training, even if we make up the training ourselves,
Well, people that sort of know they are expected to take the initiative to provide some direction. All good thoughts. I just don't really have off the cuff a good answer. I've never encountered that particular situation. I know where I live down south up in a rural area, we solve those problems by having a meeting out in the middle of the road.
Yeah.
Well, having gone through the CERT training, I think it's a valuable resource.
Huh.
And in a tsunami situation, we're going to definitely need people like that. So wildfire, you might need them.
Mm-hmm.
So more people get into that program, the better. And that might also get more people thinking about emergency preparedness too.
Because the friends of a person that take the class are going to hear about it. So I'll be getting more information out, and I'll email everybody as I get more on.
That would be helpful.
Yeah.
Another question that goes along. Somebody needs to look into Red Cross first aid courses. And
There was interest in, somebody asked if CPR was part of the CERT training, and Ashley Moore actually is an
Yeah.
instructor.
Yeah.
And I talked to her.
And they have dummies and stuff, so.
I talked to her about maybe putting on a class. because right off, it sounded like a bunch of the fishermen, captains and people at the dock were interested in that
We
training.
actually may have more interest for that than the CERT, but both would be nice to offer.
So
So
any AEDs around town?
Where are they? Fire department has them. Obviously, the ambulance has them.
Like businesses that have them?
I think the schools have them, and I
what
think
is it?
AEDs. I think the schools have them, and the health clinics.
What is it?
AEDs, the things they put on you and stand back and give them a
Defibrillator.
jolt.
Zappers.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, uh-huh.
for heart attacks.
It's good for people to know how to use those. It's hard to do anything wrong, but you can make them more effective if you do it right.
Yeah,
Where
and
you
they're
put 'em and
Where you put them in the pads and all that.
they're pretty foolproof, but the thing is how to put this nicely? You don't just jump up from an AED and go back to your cup of coffee. You need a lot of support after that, and the biggest thing is oxygen, really. You know, if you can
They
get
have it,
people
yeah.
on O2, and I just see people just like totally buying into this. And so you have an AED there, it's good for one thing, heart attack, and you need support afterwards. It's an expensive piece of equipment, and you have to replace the stupid battery, which ain't cheap, every 2 years.
They have to be recertified every 2 years.
Yeah. And that's all it can do. So, you know, I lived at the hatchery for a lot of years, and we lived in the house that was closest to the road. So people would come tumbling down out of the national forest having done something horrible to themselves. And it was almost always trauma, which is, if you don't have anything else, oxygen is your really best friend right there. And I said, for $400, we can get an oxygen kit here. And somebody comes down with, you know, their head bashed in or near drowning, or they broke their leg, or, you know, those are the kind of things. What did they get? An AED.
Drowning.
No, because it's a state thing, and now we have to have an AED there. And the odds that somebody's going to come tumbling out of the national forest with a heart attack is pretty rare. And I'm just like, so now they've got this thing that's going to cost them money every 2 years. Oxygen costs you nothing to upkeep.
you have it.
You have it. And I'm just like, so this fascination with the AED, and it got worse, of course, after they revived that guy on the football field. And I'm going, those paramedics were putting IVs in him, and I mean, it was not just the AED was very handy. Yes, it's a handy thing, and it may work, but it's kind of like doing CPR. Everybody's like, you know, like if you watch television, boy, you start pumping on somebody's chest and they're going to live. You work on an ambulance,
They don't.
they don't.
Maybe 5%.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
And
But basic
you know,
first aid is useful and common.
it's very useful. And it just, I think it helps you think in a coordinated way towards solving the problem. But, you know, this fascination with the AED, I'm just like, you know, I guess if you have a bottomless box of money.
I've done CPR and the person didn't survive.
Yeah, I mean,
The odds
you
were
know,
not in my favor that they would.
no. And even if they are in your favor, it's, you know, once again, you have to have a lot of support immediately afterwards. You have to have oxygen, you need that IV set up, you need and you know, and something like an earthquake, you know, the most common injuries in an earthquake are cut hands and feet from getting out of bed and stepping on your broken window or trying to get out through a broken thing. And, you know, that is simply fixed by having a pair of shoes with leather gloves in them next to your bed. Nobody does that.
I did after you told me.
Yeah, yeah, it's a simple thing. It costs nothing. Everybody's got extra gloves and shoes laying around, you know, and you're just like, but that's what, and you know, you look at like in Haiti when they had, you know, and boy, what do they have there for support? Nothing when that big earthquake happened. And they were setting arms with magazines, you know, or any kind of a stiff thing. I mean, those are the injuries that are going to occur. Those are the things you need to be ready for, is trauma injuries.
Mhm.
Not, if they're having heart attacks, well, it is a shocking situation, but we're probably not gonna, for the amount of money you have to invest in an AED and you have to keep, it's the gift that keeps on taking. So,
Like a boat.
yeah, oh,
Keep on putting money into it.
yep. I mean,
So probably trying to organize a first aid class would be a good,
yeah, I mean,
I think so.
I think
try to
it's,
get as many people.
and, CPR is great and
As part of-
everything, and
as part
yeah,
of that.
but,
Oftentimes I see the fire departments in particular merging basic first aid with CPR because
Oh, that was
Basic-
part of our,
Yeah.
isn't it part of the
yeah,
training, first responder training?
yeah, but not all the firefighters are first responders. That's a separate training.
The medical part.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
And they cover everything from, behavioral problems that can crop up. I mean, you get into a tense, panicky situation and you're going to have, people like after a car accident, you'll have some people who are just like, okay. And other people who are there's nothing wrong with them, but they're just flipping out. And you have to have a way to defuse that situation so that person isn't doing something crazy. And
And affecting others.
yeah.
Yeah.
and affecting others. That's kind of where the CERT training comes in, of like, how
I
do
think
you,
they have a component addressing that area of psychological assessments and that sort of thing.
Right.
At least enough to stabilize,
right,
bring back some sanity.
Basics. Uh-huh.
right,
So
But
does
that's
the-
what we need to find out from her, what she's going to cover.
Mhm.
right. I think
Yeah,
so.
I'll do that. Does the fire department have somebody that does the first response or first aid?
Well, I know we haven't had a first responder course for a long time. I know Dave Duncan and I were probably the only ones who are still on there that had it. It was a several-week course that was taught by an EMT and that lived here, Gail Wilcox, and then we had a paramedic that came over from Roseburg that was a friend of hers that upped the ante a little bit there, But we went to class for there was at least I think there's probably 8 2-hour classes, which we do 2 hours of training once a week anyway. So we did that in 2 months in the winter when you don't have a whole lot else going on and who wants to go out there and play in the rain. So that was how, but it hasn't been done for a long time. But,
Do the firefighters have EMT ratings? 1, 2,
Oh.
or
no,
no?
No.
So they depend on the responding,
the ambulance depends on the fire department for, lift assist and things like that, because they can't carry enough personnel here for Cal or to make it, cost effective.
so I suspect even in town here, there's no firemen with EMT ratings.
No. We used to have more when we had a community-run ambulance, because there was a lot of crossover from the people who worked for ambulance and worked for the fire department. But then that went away 4 years ago, and Cal-Or came in and took over. And they have paramedics, and that's real great and everything. But we kind of lost that crossover. And Cal-Or may be a source of, because those guys are, there's not a lot of ambulance calls here. And so they might be in a situation where they could have some training. They could have somebody up here, Joe, what's his last name, who runs Cal-Or in this district. And he,
Lisa Salzall.
not familiar with her.
And
And, they may be able to have somebody up here who's a paramedic who'd be willing to teach a course.
It seems like it could be a really good thing to coordinate with them.
Yeah, because they talk about, broken limbs and stabilizing broken limbs and, bleeding and,
Because whatever crew was in town is going to get overwhelmed, and what kind of support would they?
oh, yeah. And as I said, they have
and all that, yeah.
no training. And
I'll try talking to the crew and getting some information as
Yeah.
to. Or do you have somebody to talk to about
Yeah, I can talk to Lisa.
and to see if there's any way we can be a part of?
Yeah, I don't know what they have in that building, but I mean, you could even have a small class of, even if it was your firefighters going in there and during the winter and taking 2 hours of time learning stuff.
Precisely what training do you want?
I would do first responder training,
Okay.
and that would assist them. And I don't know, if they
Now,
want
there's
to.
a lower level.
Yeah, first responder is the lower level, and
Is
then
that the
there's,
lowest?
and you basically are not, pretty much can't do anything unless there's, if there's somebody else there, but that you're within your scope of operation that you're allowed to do. But, at least you would have the knowledge to assist more effectively.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not allowed to,
No open heart surgery, please.
it's kind of amazing. You're not basically allowed to do anything. You can like assist somebody with their EpiPen or, but just basic stuff that we had done anyway, is like, oh, but you're not really supposed to do that. I mean, lawsuits rule everything.
A good Samaritan law here in Oregon?
Yes, there is. And so, as I said, if there's nobody else there, but, if you overstep your scope of skill, then you could, and presented yourself as going, oh, well, yeah, I know how to do this, then. But at least that it does, give people that information and basic stuff on stopping bleeding and, all the stuff we learned in Red Cross first aid in high school still applies mostly.
Bodies are still built the same though, you know?
Yeah, isn't that strange?
No, they've changed over the time.
Well, I know mine has.
I just keep getting older.
Yeah. So are we adjourned?
Does anybody motion for adjournment?
So move.
I'll second. And we're
Did
done.
good teamwork there.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that was a
Okay,
good
we
meeting.
are adjourned.
Oh, yeah.
And Dick, I have a story for you.
Hey, what?
I have a story for you.
Oh, I love stories.
I
So I have to reciprocate with a good story.
It's kind of amazing. I remember one year we had a cold snap. Actually, it hit California too, and it lasted about 2 weeks. It was really, and it was right around Christmas. And the electric company was calling for people to not use as power, more power than they needed to, because it was just on the edge of losing everything.
It's like summertime too.
Yeah, and I remember running into this one person and she's like, turn on the Christmas lights and stuff. And I go, the power company is that. She goes, well, I just wouldn't be the same without, like, you can tell people things and it really.
It only sinks in
Story.
so far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The story. In Alaska, North Slope.
The what?
North Slope area.
Oh, way up there, as in Alaska.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm geographically in the right spot.
The local community got a bunch of the oil pipeline money for the community center. And they built one. And it was up and running for a while. And they discovered that the community center was melting the permafrost under the building. And they went around and around how to fix this mess. So the final solution was putting a freezer under the building to freeze the ground. Anyway,
Put a freezer under the building that they want to keep warm.
Yep.
No.
I thought you'd appreciate that one.
Street. That's one on Jackson, that is just by the church. That's just been a continual problem.
Thought that was a newer pipe.
Yeah, that's what's interesting to me, is like, it's the new pipe, the new pipes are the ones that, the old pipes are asbestos, and that's what people are all flipped out about that.
Well, it's weird how it's like every kind of pipe that's ever been made is somewhere in.
You got one of those?
Because of the time that that area got put in.
Right.
Yeah. Because originally it wasn't, the whole town wasn't set up.
Bellingham, it was cedar log wrapped in wire.
Right.
And it finally failed. They're gonna figure out why.
Yeah, on this recent one, it split about 12 foot. It just split. So it like took off in one direction and this part over here started mining way over here. And it was coming up everywhere.
I'm sorry.
We lost about 200,000 gallons an hour.
And did you have to get somebody else in to fix it, or was John able to?
John, finally, we were able to find the valve.
Do you still have two guys out?
And
And that's gotta come to an end.
well, they got it fired. Because of the insurance company. No, it's a settlement. Acted on soon.
Yeah, you can't just keep paying people to not work.
No, this never works. Wade basically quit last night.
Yeah, I can believe it. He's been, his wife is ready to divorce him. Just can't keep asking people to put more and more time in while somebody else is twiddling their thumbs.
Yeah, things just haven't been acted on quickly.
And is that because no administrator, or because conflict between the mayor and the?
It's just the mayor is busy. with a lot of things. By that age, either you have taken on the leadership roles somewhere or followed.
Well, let's hope this new administrator is
Yes.
able to push things through. I know her, she's very pragmatic.
You know, Melissa.
Yes, she's my neighbor, and she's not dogmatic, so it's a nice combination.
I know, I was really tickled to have her.
Nice seeing you again.
I hope she's acceptable.
We sure appreciate you being on the panel.
Sometimes I wonder, should I say something or keep my mouth shut?
Oh, John. You're not gonna walk out.
I didn't know what happened. He just hinted at it, so I probed it. He wasn't that specific, but I had to open that.
Yeah, so.
Oh, she mentioned that? Oh, funny. So she liked what I appreciated that I even was there.
Oh, yeah.
It was interesting. It's not like any I've ever done before, to be honest with you. And it's better or worse, it was just something I wasn't used to. I was impressed with her. Local down here.
And she's here, wants to be here.
She lives here. That's good for them. These are permanent.
Yeah, I'll spend the rest of life. And who knows, I just wasn't sure. Maybe she would stay, but
I don't know.
her pattern and her
Not good.
application was,
Cretaceous.
and it was like 2 years here, 2 years there, and all these other things she was involved in, but it's hard to say, and she said she was thinking about not just property, business.
I would not.
I think she did not have, she has a lot of capability.
Well, what I liked about it, was every question, she would come back, well, I had something like this. And just change the setting, the procedures and the principles you apply were the same. So going in, I never get sure that's first, I did not ask any questions. But the one-on-one interview, shaped by 50. So I think we'll be all right with that. I think we'll look over the council. You just have that kind of a feeling.
And I don't know, I picture that position really, not always is, but it can be a part of the town to where everybody really likes the administrator. We haven't had an administrator that everybody likes since I've been. Oh my God, it is.
Barry, we'll see you later.
Oh my goodness, thanks so much.
Okay. So,
Would you want me to give you the keys then?
so there's a Dropbox out front, just drop them in there.
Oh, okay.
One quick thing I do want to show you though, just for the few.
Oh, I was thinking this recording's still going.
Mm-hmm. That was the one thing I should have shown you how to do. Sorry, I was just kind of in a
Yep.
rush to get out here and get some dinner earlier. So, the record button's just right down there on the left.